Hello, hello, and welcome to PD in your PJs. I'm Julie. I'm so excited to be here with you today, and I'm just honored that you would take some time out of your busy schedule to stop in and talk with me about Seesaw. Hopefully, you've attended our brand new to Seesaw Part 1 training and are all ready to go for Part 2. Like I said, my name is Julie. I was a high school ELA teacher for 18 years, and now I'm on the teacher community team at Seesaw. I would love it if you could find me on Twitter. I'm at EdTechJulieJ, and I share a lot of tips and resources about Seesaw. And of course, you can connect with our whole team on Twitter at Seesaw. Now, you're going to get these slides and the recording of this training coming to you in an email in just a few hours. So later, you could click on that link that you see there at the bottom of your screen. I wanted to make sure you've watched the brand new to Seesaw Part 1 training for your grade level. So you might have been with me if you teach grades 6 through 12, or we've had some other presenters, including my colleague Angela, if you're in a grade other than 6 through 12. So hopefully you've attended that one for your brand new Part 1 session. And then today we're in Part 2. This is our plan for today. Now, think about that Part 1. Whether you were with me or Angela or Kara, you were playing the role of student. Excuse me. In that training, you were hands-on and you were playing the role of student. Today, I'm going to have you look at everything from your view as a teacher. So I'm going to be showing you teacher view, and you can be playing along and following along as a teacher in your own teacher account. So that's what we're going to do today. We'll create a class together in real time, and if you've created one already, that's fine. I then will show you how to connect with families. We'll talk about some ideas for implementing with students, and then we'll definitely plan our next steps as far as how we want to connect with the Seesaw community and get ready for more professional development. And of course, as always, I'll make time for questions at the end. I'm going to pop in the question box right now just to make sure everything's sounding good and people are hearing me okay. All right, it looks great. I think we're ready to move on. So this is our plan, and as you can see, our first step is creating the class, and I obviously want to do that for you in real time in this demonstration, so I'm going to pop into Seesaw to do that, and that means I'll be getting out of these slides. But when you get the slides later, I want you to know that I've embedded or included some videos here. You can see I'm kind of showing you a couple of the things that you'll have in the slides. I wanted to make sure you had that as a resource, or even if that was helpful for you, that you could share it with someone else. There is this step-by-step video here for how to create a Seesaw class where the students use QR sign in. And this is a video that shows you how to create a class when your students use email or Google to log in. And I just thought those two videos would be helpful. Obviously, we're not going to watch a video during this presentation, but I thought maybe for later, those would be helpful. So now we're going to pop out of the slides and into Seesaw, and I'll show you how to create a class live. Now, you know, when you attend workshops in PD with us, we use a lot of classes like this one for demonstration or for training. So these are pretend students, and we've had some student samples we've added here. Okay, so this is a class we use for demo. I have quite a few of those demo classes, and I will be using this class later to show you some things, but I want to actually log out of it so we can walk through the steps together as far as how to create a teacher account and how to create a class. So if you've never done these steps before and would like to do those along with me, that's just fine. And if you already have a class created, just give me a minute and we'll be back to some things that you can do with us hands-on too. So this is the screen you get when you're at app.seesaw.me, or it looks very similar to this if you're on a tablet or an iPhone or a Kindle, something like that. But this is the screen I'm on at app.seesaw.me, and that's a great place to start if you're on a computer. I, of course, am going to say I'm a teacher. And in this case, I'm not going to sign in, even though I have this account that would take me right back to that demo class that I was just using. I want to create an account. So make sure if you're creating an account for the first time today, you're doing it under Create Account. And I'm going to sign up as a teacher. I'm just going to be creating another pretend demo class. Okay, so this is just for the purposes of this demo. And I'm going to give an email that's related to this PD so that I can find it later. And then Seesaw is going to ask me to set a password, and this is how I create my Seesaw account. So you can take some time and do that purposefully so that you make sure you attach that to the email that you maybe use at school and that you use a password that is familiar to you and that you can remember. And now I'm creating that teacher account. Oh, silly, and you guys are watching me do this in real time. I forgot to add the rest of the address. Okay, You would think at this point I would know how to do that, right? Okay, now I have created my Seesaw account, and you can see some of these little popovers that I'm going to get when I create my account for the first time, and you're probably seeing these too if you've created your teacher account for the first time. These are really helpful for a new user. So if you're helping someone else get started with Seesaw too, remind them that they can, kind of click through these and learn a little bit more about Seesaw, even when they're just starting when their class when their class is in an empty state. So Seesaw is telling me it's time to set up my class. I created a teacher account. That's what you saw me do. I created an account. I gave myself a fake last name. I created an account for the purposes of this demo. You can go ahead and use your name and your school email address. But now I need to set up my class. So Seesaw is going to give me some choices here, and I can name my class. I'm going to name it August 16th demo, obviously, because we're doing this as a simulation, but you can name your class Mrs. Jacobs third grade or Mrs. Jacobs homeroom, whatever you would call your class. And if other people are using Seesaw in your school, you might use a similar nomenclature or a naming convention that you use in your school for naming classes. My own kids are in fourth grade. They're twins. They're going to be in fourth grade this year, and I can see that their teacher has already created their class, and it starts with the number 4. So it's 4 and then the teacher's last name. So I thought that was a logical way to name that class too. For this demo, let's say that this is a third grade class. So I've given my class the name and I've set a grade. And that by setting a grade, that's going to help Seesaw suggest some things to me for a third grade class. And then I'm going to click the green check mark to always go to the next screen. So Seesaw is suggesting to me that my students are the right age to log in with a QR code. If my students are older, Seesaw is going to say, go ahead and have them log in with email and password because they'll be able to remember that. In this case, for our littlest learners, Seesaw suggests that students log in with QR. I can always switch here if I want to switch to email. And similarly, if I had chosen email, Seesaw would let me switch back to QR as well. Okay, so now I can start adding names, and I'm going to add one that might appear at the top of the alphabet. I'm just going to add a few in this simulation. I'm not going to bore you by watching me type, but you can add your students' names here if they are QR sign-in. If you have chosen to set up an email class, those students will add themselves essentially by signing in later, so you do not have to add their names. Okay, so now I'm starting to add students. My class is created. You can see that I have a few students already on my roster. I can always add more students. I just didn't want to waste your time with that today. So now my class is here. This is the class we created together in real time. You saw me create my teacher account. I added a few student names. I've set the grade level for the class, and I have decided, or I know now that my students will log in with QR based on the way that the age that my students are, based on the way Seesaw treats that. Now I am going to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to pop into that other demo class. This is an empty class right now since we just created it in real time, and I want to show you a class that has a few more things to show. But before I switch back to my other demo class, I do want to remind you, and you did this the other day, if you joined us for part 1 at any grade level, you joined the class as a student by using a QR code, and I want to show you how to find that. You see right here where I'm kind of squiggling around my mouse, there's this button right here at the bottom of my class screen, and it says plus students. And if you click that button, it's going to reveal my class's QR code. And you did that the other day. If you joined us for part 1, you scanned a code, or maybe you used a text code, but you got in with the QR code. Okay, and so then in your class, this is now the code to join, and you can cut and paste that and put that on other things. But what you're really going to want is the poster. So I'm going to remind you how I did that. I clicked this button down here, and now I'm going to click poster. And now Seesaw is making this for me. I don't have to create this poster or printable. Seesaw has made it for me. It's going to give me some instructions. It's going to give me a friendly reminder that we don't want any photographs of this on social media. And then here's my poster. And what often happens is that teachers will print this or print multiple copies of it and display it around their classroom. Okay, so this is how your students log in, and you can print this and put it wherever convenient. And here's a picture right here on the screen of what that looks like when it's hanging in your classroom and when a student is moving around with a device to scan the code to log in. And remember, that's not a process they're going to need to do all the time necessarily, especially if they're on one-to-one devices. They might log in one time and then they're always logged in. It's a little bit different if they're sharing and might have to log in and out, but they just need to be familiar with how to stand up, go up to this poster, and scan that code to log in. Okay, so I wanted to just make sure you knew where that was down here, plus students. But now I'm going to log out because I want to go back to that other account where I have more things in my class. Okay, just so that when I'm showing you some stuff today, you'll see some more examples. Okay, so I'm in an 8th grade class now, and I just use this because it's pretty full of student examples. So thanks for bearing with me as I pop back and forth between slides and the demo. I'll go back to my slides in just a minute. I just wanted to show you a few things. Remember the other day in part 1, you're playing along then as a student in that particular simulation. Now you're looking hopefully at a teacher screen. You can maybe see your name up here at the top left. This is what we call the profile icon, and all of your account settings as a teacher are there. My colleague Angela gave me the pro tip one time that if you want to set your account so that your name isn't your first name here, because your students don't call you by your first name, it helps if your name here is what your students call you. And I thought that was a really great tip that I learned from her. So in the past, when I logged in, and you even saw me do it before when I made my name Julie Seesaw, I had put my name Julie Jacobs, but now it kind of reminds me that if I was setting up a class for real students, I probably would put it as Mrs. Jacobs and use Mrs. as my first name, because if that's what your students call you, that makes sense for them to see it looking like that. So that's your profile icon. You log in and out that way. Okay, so this is my class feed. Sometimes we refer to that as the journal view or the journal tab, and you see that button there. I'm swirling my mouse over it, and you just scroll through the journal. These are student posts and student creations that live in the journal view. Okay, so I'm in journal view here. I'm going to show you what some of these other tabs are, but I want to point out a couple of other things real quick. Here is the wrench, or depending on where you live in the world, you might call it a spanner. That's where you set up and make some choices about your class. Okay, so this wrench is going to let you determine some settings for the class that you're in. So I've already made some of those choices. For example, I've named my class. I've decided what color I want to use as like my color scheme. I can create or use an icon there. So I have some choices to make. I can actually add another teacher to this class by clicking this button. That's really helpful if you have specialists, maybe like a librarian or a music teacher who works with a lot of different students, and maybe they don't want their own class, but you could just add them as a co-teacher. You do that from right here. Again, this is at the wrench, class settings, then lots of choices. And I don't want to take a ton of time to go over this with you. You'll have to think through this and think about what fits best for your class and your workflow. But here are some of those other choices you can make about whether you want students to see each other's work, whether you want to approve items or not, and then you just turn off and on some of those choices there. Okay, so that's all in your settings, and you can take some time to go through that and make some of those choices. Of course, later I'm happy to answer questions about any of that as well. I also want to show you a little bit more about the activities tab here. So remember, journal, the feed, you scroll through these posts. The other day in part 1, we were using a lot of activities. So I, as the teacher, would have been in the activities tab, sharing activities with you that way. I think I wanted to show you this activities tab because it's really neat the way it looks here, that you can see all of the activities you've shared with students. So again, journal is the students' posts, the things they've created. Activities are the activities that I've shared with students. And what's really neat, if you look here, and this is why I wanted to get back into this class because it was full of more stuff, I can actually see how many responses I have to a certain activity, how many I'm waiting for, how many need approval. And this is also the really cool place that I can see all of the student responses all on one screen. And so we talked about that as a time saver for teachers, that you don't have to click through a lot of different links. And of course, then you don't have to also take home a stack of papers. You could just in one screen see all student responses to a certain activity. And that's really, really, really handy, especially if you're thinking about something like a bell ringer or a ticket out the door, an exit ticket. It would be really nice to just at one glance be able to see all of those. And you do that from the activities tab. So I can see that these are the activities I've shared with my students. And if I click that gray bar on any of those activities, I'm going to be able to see the responses that I have, how many is waiting for approval, etc. So journal tab, activities tab. Okay. I also want to show you something that's a little bit different from the regular activities workflow. As a teacher in brand new to Seesaw Part 1, I was clicking this green add button and I was either browsing the activity library to look for an activity or I was sharing one with you from there. I want to remind you that you can also create your own activity, which is really just your set of step-by-step instructions from this green button, but you can also post right to the student's journal. And I want to show you why that might be handy for you. And this is the time of year maybe that this is really going to come into play, like with a first day of school class picture, for example, or a welcome message or greeting for your students. You might want to just take a photo or add a photo and then share it with everyone. And it's not really part of an activity, and that's not the workflow you would use for this. You're just going to say, well, maybe there's something I want to share with everyone, and I'm going to add that item. And you could see I went through those steps kind of quickly. I'm on a computer. It might look a little bit different if you were on a tablet, but maybe I just want to share with every student. Okay, and I just want to post it to their journal. It's not part of an activity, but it's just going to go right to the student's class journal or their feed. You can also see something popping up on your screen here too, and that's folders. You can always create those by clicking the wrench in the upper right. And this is a really helpful organizational tool. If your kids are older than maybe like second grade, I think it's a great idea to go ahead and create folders and let students add their own items to folders. You'll find that in your class settings. I just wanted to make sure you knew that you could post right to a student's journal without using the activity tab. So I did the green plus and then add to student journal or post to student journal. And I think this is just showing you that my connection is taking a while, but that's a pretty simple flow to use. Any connected adult would see that that was posted by me, but it's going to everyone, and now everyone sees that. So remember, I can do something in the activity library and share an activity, but I can also just post right to the journal, and I can even tag everyone, and that's really great for photos if you want that photo to stay in a student's journal. And students can actually even post right to the journal as well without doing it as part of an activity. What people love about activities though is that the step-by-step instructions are there for students. So that's why the activities workflow is so helpful too, but students can always hit the green button and add right to their own journal as well. So we've talked a lot about the journal view and about the activities tab. I do want to talk briefly about these other tabs here. We're going to spend the most time on inbox, which is your messages and announcements, but let me briefly say that skills is part of Seesaw Plus and Seesaw for Schools. And if you do a lot of standards-based grading and would like to click on some basically like scores or levels for students, what we call skills, you can do that here in the skills tab. Where you find that is this kind of graduation cap looking icon. You click that and then assess a skill or more than one skill, or assign a skill, and then you check mark it. So that's part of Seesaw for Schools, especially if you're using that in your school. If you're not, you don't need to worry so much about that, but I just wanted you to know that that's there, and then that's where you would see that information is under that skills tab. And then you can also choose to enable or set up a class blog, and you do that from the wrench or the spanner. What that basically does is let you pick certain items from your class feed or journal and post it to some place with its own unique URL, and then people can visit that even when they're not connected to your class. So that's not something you need to worry about right now, but you could learn more about it, and enable it by clicking the wrench or the spanner there. If you like something from your class that you think is worth sending to your blog so that others could see it, you just click that little globe icon and that publishes it to the blog. Okay, so I told you we'd go back to inbox to talk about messages and announcements. This is so cool, and we've made a lot of really great updates to this over the last year. If you think about the journal as the student work, the student posts and creation, the inbox is really a place for communication between connected family members and teachers. So the journal's going to be the kids' posts. The inbox is going to be the adult communication. That's kind of how I like to think about it in my brain. So what I have the option to do once families are connected to my class is I can always hit that green add button and send an announcement. An announcement is going to go to everyone probably. I would probably send it to all connected family members, but you could send it to all students and family members as well, or just to all students if that's helpful for you. So I'm going to say I want to send this to all family members, and I'm just going to type something really quick for this demo. But what I wanted to show you is that you can add anything you can add or make in Seesaw, you can add to an announcement. And so in the same way that I was adding a photo before, maybe I have a photo that I want to share with everyone, and then I can send it as an announcement. What's nice about that is that it stays in the inbox, so that's a place for communication, and it doesn't live forever as a student post in the journal. So when this is going to come in handy for you this year, I bet, is handouts like field trip information, permission slips, other flyers that are just things that a lot of times get photocopied and sent home in backpacks, but you could always photograph those and send them as announcements so that every parent could see it that way, or you could even upload it from Google Drive or as a PDF. So if you have notes that need to go home to families, if they're already connected to your Seesaw class, that's a great way to get that sent home. So that is in an announcement, okay, and I can send it to all family members. And now I'm sending it to everyone who's connected. That's a family announcement. You can see here I am in my inbox tab, and what these are the names of the connected family members. And of course, this is a demo class, so we have some demo parents connected to student accounts. And why I'm showing you that is because this is how I can correspond with one of those family members privately. So here I'm sending this to John's dad, Alan, and it's just going to him. It's a private message. So I'm sending something just to him. It's not going to everyone. That's what a message is in Seesaw. I can do an announcement to everyone, but I could also do a private individual message, okay? And you have some settings around announcements and messages that you can set to your preference there at the wrench or the spanner. So you can check that out and review that. But I think you really will like this communication tool as you're starting your year with Seesaw. Okay, let's pop back over to the slides because I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about connecting family members. I did include some videos for you in this set of slides, so when you get them later, you can look at them. And like I said, I thought maybe that would also be a helpful resource to share with others if you're helping them get started for Seesaw. We talked about announcements and messages, and now we're going to talk about connecting families. Remember when I showed you how to print the student QR code poster? We did it by clicking plus students. When you're ready to connect families, you're going to click plus families down there, okay? And I'll show you that in real time in just a second. Then if Seesaw asks you to enable or turn on family access, you want to say yes. I just always want to remind people, because I know people have a lot of questions about this when they're getting started with Seesaw. Parents or connected family members only see the work of their own child. Nobody sees any other child's work. The exception to that is if you tag everyone, like I just did with my photo. When I sent that photo, welcome to third grade, and I sent it to everyone, then that is an example of something everyone would see. But if something is just tagged to one student and it's their post and their journal, nobody else sees that. Okay, so I have said yes to turning on family access. Then I can print invitations. I'll show you this in real time in just a second. I can also email if I like that option better. I taught older students, and so for their parents, this was very helpful for me because older students are not great about taking paper home. So paper gets crumpled in a backpack and thrown in a locker or a trash can. So this was not a great strategy for me, but I was having a lot of luck with this. Okay, so you can email or send home paper. We also have the paper invitations printed in a lot of different languages. So go ahead and try to make sure you're inviting families in the language they speak. And then something else I want to reiterate before I pop out of this and back into the demo class is that families need to use the family app. Remember, you've been using the app that has the word class in it. It's the Seesaw Learning Journal class app. Connected family members are going to need the family app. They can always go to app.seesaw.me too, but if they're using this on a phone, as we see many of our connected parents want to do, they're going to need to get it out of the App Store or the Google Play Store, and they need for that to be the family app. I just want to reiterate that because if you are helping families get connected, like at a Meet the Teacher or open house event, you want to make sure you're telling them they have to get the family app. And here's an example. I literally just took this as a screenshot from my phone the other day. When you type Seesaw into the App Store, you can see the class app and the family app. So make sure parents know they need the family app. The class app is what you're going to use as a teacher, and students are going to use that. But when parents connect, they're going to want to use that family app. I also put this video here for you in case that would be helpful if you wanted to share that with family members at some point. That will walk them through that. Okay, let's see how to make those paper invites in real time though. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my journal. That's where I'm gonna live most of the time in Seesaw. These student posts are showing up in the journal view, but I'm ready to click plus families. I wanna invite families. I have lots of options for languages, and then I'm gonna print those paper invites. Seesaw's making those for me. I don't have to do any work. They're generating these for me, and these are the papers that I can pass out at like a back to school night, or I can send home in a backpack. And there's a unique invitation for each student, okay? So you have to make sure you're sending the right one home with the right kid and not accidentally getting those mixed up. But then parents can see a lot of information about how to do this from their smartphone, how to do it from their computer. And when they scan this code, they have to scan it from the Seesaw family app, but then they can connect to your class immediately. So what a lot of teachers do is they print this, all of these invitations, and then they hand them out at like a Meet the Teacher or open house or back to school event, and then they get parents connected right away. And that's how we did that. We clicked families, and then we printed the paper invitations. You can do an email too, and like I said, I had a lot of success with that with older students. Okay, again, you just have to reiterate to parents, they need the family app, not the class app. And students can have up to 10 family members connected with this invite, and you don't need to print out 10 different invitations because the same invitation will work for up to 10 people. If parents do this option, where they're trying to connect from a computer and not from a smartphone, they have to type in this address, and then they're going to have to click their student's name off a list, and you'll need to approve that connection, and that'll pop up for you as a notification. You just need to approve it. So it's one additional step, but it's pretty easy and not too hard to connect. Here's a little tip for you. If you're having parents and family members join, make sure there's like a welcome video or a quick photo picture of your classroom. When a parent joins, we want to make sure they see something there. So make sure that something has been added so they don't get to an empty class or empty journal. So you can think about whether you want that to be a certain activity that your students do, or if it's literally just a picture of your classroom or a picture of yourself. That's a great way to greet parents and family members, and that's an easy thing to do for a first post. Okay, so remember the Seesaw Activity Library has lots of getting started collections for students at every grade level. That's going to be a place you're going to want to start when you're just getting students started with Seesaw, because these are 5 very simple activities for your grade level. Now this is an older grade pictured here in this screenshot, so it's organized kind of by subject here. and you can of course scroll with this scrolling bar. But if your class is like a first or second grade class, let's say, you're going to see just 5 really simple activities that those students could try to get started with Seesaw. In fact, if you joined us for brand new part 1, you did some of those simple getting started activities. We also have a game called Seesaw Go that a lot of teachers like to use to help get their students started with Seesaw. You can learn more about it here, or you can click this when you get the slides later. It basically are just, it's little QR codes you can hang up around your classroom to let your kids kind of walk around and learn different things about Seesaw and about your class. And I do want to give you some other last minute info here before we conclude today, and I'll save some time for questions. Make sure that class QR code poster doesn't get accidentally photographed and shared on social media. If this is hanging in your room or is taped to some tables, sometimes that can accidentally show up in the background of some photos. And we want to, of course, keep your class and your students private. So just make sure it's not accidentally winding up in photos. A tip that my colleague Angela shares is just put a Post-it note over the QR code. A kid could always move it if they needed to log into the class, but if you always keep the Post-it note there, then it wouldn't accidentally then show your code on social media. We do have a lot of signs, printables, and resources ready to go for you for your classroom. I gave you a couple of links here, so when you get these slides later, you can click on these, or you can click this button here that says resources. A lot of teachers are setting up areas where students can record and printing this recording spot poster. We have digital citizenship norms that are really nice to print and display. Just a lot of things that really are part of your Seesaw experience as you promote sharing and reflection in your classroom. I also want to remind you about where our help center is. This is your first stop if you're stuck on something or have questions or need a little extra help. And remember, there's 3 ways you can get info here. The arrow's pointing at all of those. We also offer free professional development. You obviously know about it because you're here with me today, but don't forget you can check any of those past recordings on YouTube. I always want to remind you too about Seesaw for Schools. Almost everything we talked about in these first 2 webinars is part of free Seesaw. I did show you a glimpse of skills today. That's part of Seesaw for Schools. So if that's interesting to you and you want to learn more about it, that's where you can find us on the web. And then don't forget to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you're used to, being connected with other teachers on social media. We're there, and we would love to connect with you there. You can find me on Twitter at EdTechJulieJ. I have talked for a really long time, and I have not been back in the question box for a while. So I think what I'm going to do is say goodbye and stop the recording, and then I'll stay online for a few minutes so that I can answer questions as they're coming in. And then, of course, you know where you can find me if you want to talk later on Twitter. Thanks so much for joining today. I hope to see you again in PD real soon. Bye-bye.